and hold me like I do, 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 and hold me like I do.
Hey, you guys, how are you? It's good to see everyone. Welcome in, welcome in. Hey, a million sparkles. I haven't seen you in forever. It's good to see you, babe. Hey, Neat Noodle. Hey, Jen, how you doing? It's good to see you. I'm glad you guys are here. All right. Well, I also agree with what Jen said. I'm actually still feeling bad for Connie. They should have never, I can't even read, put her on the stand today. Yeah, I feel like, she wasn't really necessary. She didn't really have anything to add. That was, I mean, about the only thing she could add was that she remembered Linda saying that she thought she might have run Todd over with the car. But now we're about to get some good testimony. We've got about an hour left. I'm going to speed him up to 1.25 because I know it's late for some of you guys. And let me just say, this is the gentleman we've been hearing about. He is the, oh my gosh, the fire marshal investigator person. That's not like his actual title. He's going to tell us his actual title, but that's who this is. I would imagine that he's going to come with some good testimony, and probably it will be very spicy because, as you know, there's a lot of objections and a lot of things. So let us get right into it. I'm going to skip. How did we get Scott Leroy? That's right. All right. Also, giving questions, doing direct examination is prosecuting attorney DJ Khalid. Can't remember how to say his name. That's who this guy reminds me of. So let's see how we do. All right, here we go.
If you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat, and once you're settled in, we'll have you tell us your full name and spell your last, please. If you want to give me that empty cup, or it may have water in it, but thank you.
My name is Scott Leroy. Leroy is Leroy.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, how are you employed?
I am currently retired from the Michigan State Police and work two part-time jobs as a private fire investigator and as a medical examiner investigator.
And when you were employed with the Michigan State Police, what was your role there?
My last role was from 2001 to 2020. I was a fire investigator stationed here in Paw Paw.
And how long were you with the Michigan State Police for?
31 years.
When did you start there?
I started in 1989.
And as a role as, for instance, starting at the Michigan State Police, did you just start out as a fire investigator?
No, my first 10 years, I was a road trooper at the Ithaca Post. In 2000, I got promoted to uniform sergeant, and I was a supervisory uniform sergeant at the Lakeview Post. Then I transferred down here to Paw Paw in 2001 in the role of a fire investigator.
Fair to say that as your time prior to becoming a fire investigator, you were trained in, basic investigative skills, evidence collection, that sort of thing?
Yes.
And then you indicated, what year did you become a fire investigator for the Michigan State Police?
2001.
And prior to becoming a fire investigator in 2001, was there a certain level of coursework that you had to attend or go through?
I had attended, before I got into the Michigan State Police, I attended Lake Superior State University, obtained a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and an associate's degree in fire science.
All right, he's
While I
smart
was a
and
trooper,
qualified. We'll just
took
keep
some
going.
courses.
All right, here we go.
If I could, I have my CV here to review all the classes if I could, to refresh my memory, or no?
Well, let me ask it this way.
Okay.
Have you provided a copy of your curriculum vitae or CV to the prosecutor's office?
I have.
And the fair and accurate representation of which you provided through, you said,
With a
and additional coursework.
taken
Okay, he knows what he's doing. Let's just skip through this part, okay?
most of investigation.
Because let's hear what he has to say.
Mr. Miller's field experience today, and if
Anything past 2000.
I obtained that certification in 2019.
No, I just need to strike the last part with respect to anything past 2007. This case is about his expertise level in 2007.
I would disagree. I think he's allowed to give his training experience today, and if that would affect or change his opinion, obviously, then Mr. Miller's free to ask him about that. But I think his experience today is just as relevant as it was in 2007.
I agree. I'll overrule the objection.
Let's see if they get to
With
cross.
respect to, so it sounds to me like you've done a continuing level of coursework throughout your years as a fire investigator, fair?
Yes.
And have you been qualified as an expert in courts before?
Yes.
In what field?
In fire investigation, I've also been an expert in meth lab identification.
And as part of being a fire investigator, is that we've heard maybe terms of
Okay, just so y'all know, he knows how to investigate meth labs, so I don't think this guy's messing around.
called cause and origin. Is that something that you have opined about in courts before?
Yes.
And do you recall how many courts you've been qualified as an expert in?
I've been qualified 47 times in origin and cause investigation, including, I believe, 7 times in this court.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I'd move to admit Scott Leroy as an expert in fire investigation, cause and origin.
No objection, Your Honor.
Receive his testimony as an expert.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, I'd like to take you back to January 7th of 2007. Do you recall that?
We're not going to get in that portal just yet. Hey, Daisy Faye, good to see you. Hey, get me a snack. I am. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I just needed to rest. All right, here we go. And because I don't want to get too burnt out. We still have Lori. Oh, that's going to be just an absolute dumpster fire. But I hope you guys will be here with me. Please be here with me. I can't do this alone.
That date?
Yes,
And on that date, were you still working for the Michigan State Police?
I was.
And what role were you working in at that time?
I was a detective sergeant with the Michigan State Police Fire Investigation Unit out of 5th District Headquarters here in Paw Paw.
And we've heard terms thrown about the word fire marshal. Is that you?
That would be yes, that's me.
Okay, all right. Just so there's no confusion, when we hear the term fire marshal, are you commonly referred to as a fire marshal?
That's there's a small difference, but more people usually just interchangeably use those two phrases.
And on 1/7 of 2007, did you respond to a residence on County Road 215 in Lawrence Township?
Yes.
Do you know that to be the Stermer residence?
Yes.
And how was it you were dispatched on that date?
I was contacted by cell phone at home off duty at approximately 4:30 in the afternoon and informed of the fire.
And did you then respond?
I did.
Do you recall about what time you responded?
I arrived on scene approximately 6 p.m.
And upon arriving on scene, can you describe what you observed? I guess you rephrase that. Upon your initial arrival, what did you observe?
There's obviously a lot of activity going on. Fire department was there. Sheriff's department vehicles were there. I approached there was a lot of commotion going on. It was rain/snow going on. I would have contacted whoever was in charge, either the fire chief or the lead law enforcement on scene.
And is this kind of just the process of you beginning your investigation into this fire?
Yes, I would do that just so they know I was there.
And what about the condition of the house at the time you arrived on scene? Can you describe that for the jury, please?
The house was still actively smoking. There were no flames to be seen, but there was a lot of smoke still coming out of the house. There was a fire apparatus parked right in front of the house. I believe it was a ladder truck with hoses still on the ground and active fire suppression going on.
Now, this might kind of go without saying, but I have to ask this anyway. Does the fact that the fire is still going on, does that prevent you from going in and conducting any investigation at this time?
Yes.
And at some point in time, did you have the opportunity to view the body of Todd Stermer?
I did.
How was it you were came to do that? Can you describe that for the jury, please?
One of the officers on scene directed me to where Todd Stermer was laying, and I went over there and I would document Todd Stermer's body, which is common practice for a fire investigator at a fatal fire scene.
How is it you document that?
I use photographs.
So the evening of the 7th, you took photographs?
Correct.
Do you recall exactly what you would have taken photographs of on the evening of the 7th?
On the evening of the 7th, I took photographs of Todd Stermer. I also took some initial photographs of the structure and some of the surroundings.
May I approach the witness? Sir, I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 34-1 through 34-31. Ask if you take a look at those, please. Having looked at People's Proposed Exhibit 34, you recognize those photographs?
Those are photographs that I took both the evening of the 7th and the next day on the 8th.
Those are fair and accurate representations of the observations you would have made then on the 7th and the 8th of January 2007?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I'd move for the admission of 34-1-3431. May I publish to the jury? Thank you. Sir, I'm going to show you, if we can, 34-1. What are we looking at here in this photograph?
This is the front or east side of the structure on the evening of the 7th. And you'll tell evening of the 7th is dark and snowy. The photographs of the 8th are during the daytime.
And do you recall about what time it was you were taking these photographs?
It would have been after I got on the scene after 6 p.m. I don't know exactly when.
And contained in this photograph, right here about center where I'm circling with the red laser pointer, what are we observing there?
There's fire hoses coming from the fire engine, and there's also a red gasoline can.
And does that become relevant here a little later on in your testimony?
It will.
And looking at 34-2.
This is the rear or west side of the residence. And just to the very far left, you can see the front bumper of a van.
34-3.
That is the van from the previous photograph, or the bumper of the previous photograph.
Now, you're obviously on scene as a fire investigator, correct?
That's correct.
Can you explain why you're taking pictures of a van?
As I'm a fire investigator, but I'm also a detective with the Michigan State Police. So if I see something that may be evidence, I'm going to take note of it, especially in the evening when it's dark. I take a photograph of it because you never can take too many photographs of something. So I noticed this van behind, and I think the next picture will show also what I noticed, so I took some pictures.
Now, I'm going to ask this if I can right now. You've been shown approximately 31 photographs here today, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that the full totality of all the photographs you took?
No.
How many photographs did you end up taking in this case?
It was over 100.
And looking at 34-4.
That is a close-up of the van bumper where I noticed what could be blood.
And 35-5.
35-5, that is going to be the north side of the house.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Thank you for that. And looking at
So Patricia says, have you seen the pics of Linda before she was styled for court? Yes. Yes, I have. Also, welcome in. Good to see you, Patricia. Who else did I miss? I missed anybody? Oh, hi, Mac. It's good to hear from you too, buddy. I did. In fact, before she was styled for court, her is in my thumbnail. So yes, I've seen it. All right, let's keep going.
at 34-6.
This is on the north side of the house. Also what appeared to be blood on the ground. And then if you go back to 5, you can see with my photograph just to the lower right, you can see the 2 orange flags that are in the ground.
Where I'm circling again with the pointer.
Yes. And those are, and 6 is a close-up of those flags.
And Your Honor, I guess I'm going to kind of warn the court the next couple of pictures are going to be a little bit graphic of Mr. Stermer, so I don't know how the court wants to proceed with that or give the family an opportunity.
Copies I can look at?
Yes, Mr. Leroy has them right there.
Okay.
B7 and 8.
Jerry, there's some graphic photos coming up next, so just alerting you to that, okay? And if there's any members in the audience who want to leave the courtroom while they're on display, I can take a break and let you leave. No one? Okay.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 34-7. What are we looking at here, sir?
That is a photograph of Todd Stermer as I was examining him.
And we are looking at, there are several items in this photograph. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
If, what are we looking at, these items, if you're aware, here on the chest of Mr. Stermer?
Specifically the chest, well, I can see there, the 2 larger pads are AED pads, which are used by EMS. And I believe the smaller ones are heart sensors over on the chest and abdomen area.
And there are a multitude of what look like clothing items here. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And do you know how those got there?
Apparently bystander or EMS and Good Samaritans who arrived on scene first placed blankets and clothing over Mr. Stermer, and I would have removed some of them in order so I could photograph Mr. Stermer.
And looking at 34-8, what are we looking at here?
That is Mr. Stermer's feet, and around his feet are a pair of gray sweatpants and a pair of white socks on his feet.
And with respect to those sweatpants, was there anything peculiar about them that you noticed?
When I took other items, the blankets and other items off of Mr. Stermer to photograph him, there was a detectable odor of a liquid accelerant in the area from Mr. Stermer, and as I got closer, they seemed to be coming from the sweatpants.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked, if I may approach, Your Honor. People's Exhibit 17. See if you recognize those.
These are the sweatpants that are in a nylon bag with my initials on them.
Those are the ones you then removed from the body of Todd Stermer?
Yes.
And these are the same sweatpants you indicated smelled of liquid accelerant, is that correct?
That's correct.
It's a clarifying question, Your Honor. Fair. Now, on the 7th of January 2007, did you collect any other evidence?
I did not.
Did you then return to the property?
I did.
On what date was that?
The next day, on January 8th.
And on that date, what did you do?
On that date, it was concentration on starting my cause and origin investigation of the house.
And how is it you go about doing that, generally speaking?
In general terms, when you do cause and origin investigation, I'm going to examine the house, both exterior and interior, noting burning, things that aren't burned, things that are gone, that have burned up. It's a general examination. You typically do the entire, or you do the, if possible, the entire exterior, and if possible, the entire interior.
Now, when you returned on the 8th, was the scene still secured?
Yes.
How was it secured?
The sheriff's department had left a patrol car on the scene overnight.
Was there also like crime scene tape or anything like that you recall?
I don't recall if there's crime scene tape.
And was this in the daytime or nighttime hours that you did this? On the 8th?
It was the daytime.
Do you recall about what time?
It would have been, the exact time, no, I know it had been shortly after 9 a.m. because that's when I was notified of the search warrant.
And as part of your, I think you've talked about a walk around, do you take photographs?
Yes.
And did you do so in this case?
Yes.
And looking at the remaining photographs in People's Exhibit 34, do you recognize what those are depicting, just generally?
All these photos are 34, correct?
Yes, those are all
yes.
34, but I'm asking about the remaining.
Yes, yes, those are the next day on the 8th.
And what is the purpose in, part of the purpose in taking these photographs?
To document the scene.
And in this case, just generally speaking, do you recall what you took photos of?
I took photos of the house, both exterior and interior.
Now, were you able to make a deep entrance into the interior of the house?
I was able to make entrance into the house on the west side. I tried to make entry into the east side, but that was limited due to the structural collapse that was on the east side of the structure.
Is part of your process also to collect physical evidence?
Yes.
And where do you collect that from, if you can kind of just generally detail that? For instance, inside the residence, outside the residence?
If I see something that is potential evidence, I'm going to collect it, inside or outside.
Fair enough. Have you heard the term excavation before?
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
In fire investigation community, excavation means removing fire debris from the scene in order to look for evidence or other patterns to help determine where and what could be responsible for the fire.
And did you conduct an excavation in this case?
I did.
And was that captured in your photographs?
Bits and pieces of it were captured. Unfortunately, the scene after I excavated it, I cannot find a photograph of it.
And also, as part of an investigation into a fire, do you collect samples?
I can.
And describe for the jury what those might entail, if you can, please. What the samples might be, like that you might look for or collect.
If I'm sampling items to look for ignitable liquids, I will typically look for the surface that is in the area of origin to see if there was ignitable liquid in the area of origin, which often includes carpeting, carpet pad, flooring, carpet tack strips, or other parts of a structure that remain behind in the area of origin that may hold traces of a flammable liquid.
All right. And so let's go ahead, if we can, and go back to your photographs. If I look at 34-9, what are we looking at here?
Before we look at that, I'm quite curious because I don't know about Courtroom Confidential. I've never watched them, but I do know Recovery Addict. I do enjoy Recovery Addict. I'm curious. Now I'm going to have to go back and listen and see why he thinks that this is a laughable attempt. I'm quite interested. Thanks for letting me know that, Patricia. I do like Recovery Addict. I'm going to have to go check out the other channel too.
That is the front or east side of the structure.
And in 34-10?
That is the south side of the structure.
Now, there is...
Here we go with the damn
for lack of a better
directions.
word, we'll call it a rectangle cut along the cement foundation here. Do you see that?
Yes.
Do you know what that is?
That will be done during fire suppression. If you go back one, you can see the same thing happened on the east side. Below the windows, you can see There is holes cut in the wall. That is standard for a fire department to do that, especially if they can't make entry through normal access, the doorway, where in this case they couldn't because of the structural collapse.
What is their purpose in cutting those holes in the house?
To get access to the interior to put the fire out.
Spray it with water?
Yes.
And let's go to 34-11. What are you looking at here?
That is the north side of the house.
And there is a large green object depicted here in the photograph. What are we looking at there, if you have any knowledge of that?
That is a fuel oil tank that is filled to typically.
Okay. If you're not looking at your screen, could you look now? Let me move this out of the way. The way that I understand it, because of the way that they've been describing it, it sounds like Todd was over here,
Power a fuel oil furnace.
over here somewhere, right? Is that right? If you're looking at the photo he's on the left, to the left of the this green tank thingy. Am I close?
And 34-12.
This is the rear of the house, or the west side of the house. facing the
Okay. Thank you, Patricia.
And 34-13.
This is an aerial photograph. During the scene, I had a fire department aerial truck come to the scene, so I could get above the house and take a photograph from the top down.
So we're kind of talking like a ladder truck type of thing?
Yes.
Okay. With the bucket on the end?
I don't think this one had a bucket, but it was a ladder truck.
Okay. But that allows you to get up high and look down in.
Correct. This is the day before drones.
And 34-14.
This is also from the aerial truck with a house and showing the more the yard towards the north.
And there are some persons kind of standing here in the photograph. Any idea who those are?
I believe one is the deputy from Berrien County Sheriff's Department who was doing the measuring, and probably more law enforcement officers.
And there were photographs earlier taken of some flags that you saw. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are those also depicted in this photograph?
Let's see if I can. I believe they're down there to the right. There's an orange dot. I don't think that orange dot is it, but the flags are right in that area.
And if you have knowledge, there are some tire tracks contained in this photograph. Is that fair?
Yes.
Do you know what those go to?
Those were to the wrecker that came and took the van the night before.
Looking at 15.
This is another photograph showing to the north.
And as you've previously testified, is that Mr. Galoo's from Berrien?
I believe so.
Okay.
I can't identify him from this photograph.
And 16.
With the ladder truck hasn't
Hey,
moved,
Kez, good
so
to
all
see
I've
you,
done
babe.
is turn 180 degrees. That's the shoulder of the firefighter who's behind me, making sure I don't fall. Taking a picture back down the driveway, back towards the road.
And 17.
17 is a close-up of the rear or west of the house, specifically focusing on the basement door and windows.
18.
This would have been from that basement door, standing right at the door, taking a picture
Thank you,
straight
get
in
me a snack.
to the structure. So I'd be facing east, taking a picture of the debris in this area.
Now, without getting into too much detail, there are a few objects contained in this photograph other than debris.
Well, it's all debris, but it's all identifiable debris. How's that?
Fair. So, for instance, my laser pointer, I'm pointing at an object in this part of the photo. Do you recognize that?
Is that the fireplace from the upstairs fireplace?
Where my laser pointer is?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the upstairs fireplace.
Fair. And what do we have right here at the bottom?
That is a section of chimney pipe.
And looking at 19.
That is a close-up of the fireplace for the upstairs.
And, moving on. Let's look at number 20.
That is a close-up of inside the upstairs fireplace.
And can you kind of explain to the jury why it was you would have taken the photograph up close and at this angle?
This is basically showing that it appears to be a fire in the fireplace, or there's remnants of a fire in a fireplace because of the burnt wood inside.
And that would be this object right here where my
Correct.
laser pointer is?
Correct.
And looking at 21.
21 are the sections of chimney pipe that I removed from the inside of the residence during my excavation, and that's where I stacked them.
22.
So 22, this photo, I've now stepped into the basement area through the center door of the basement. I've now rotated to the right 90 degrees. So if you look to the very tight left side of the photograph, that's going to be where the fireplace is. So this view is looking directly south to where there were two bedrooms, a downstairs bedroom and an upstairs bedroom. The floor is burned away. The floor, separating the first floor and the basement, is burned away in this area. You can see there's a window up and down. There should be a floor there to separate the first floor and the basement level.
Looking at 23.
So 23 is, I've now turned 90 degrees back. So if I walked into the basement from the outside, I walked straight forward, and the solid charred wall on the left side, that is adjacent to the basement fireplace. I am documenting the location of the laundry room behind that wall.
Hey, Naya, I hope I'm saying your name right. Thanks for being here. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm having a real struggle because it's hard for me to I have a lot of people that are only able to watch at night, and I miss connecting with everybody, but the trials are during the day, and there's almost like no way to just like really do a good job recapping, or if there is, I can't figure it out. Hey, Chicken Shite, so good to see you. Kez Chick, this one's a doozy, babe. Absolutely a doozy. We're only on day 4, though, so you're not too far behind.
Going up and down, there was a wall there. So just behind those studs, you can see just the outline of right there is the washer and dryer.
And what are we looking at in 24?
24 is I've made my way back there and documented the dryer.
And 25?
So I've stepped back in the middle of the downstairs basement, facing east, because you can see the fireplaces. But I'm focusing more to the north or left in the area where the fuel oil furnace is located. Before we go to the next photo, you can notice just above the basement fireplace is a large 2x12 piece of structure that is black charred. And I'll show you why that's important in a second, in the next photo.
What is this green that we can see here at the top of the photograph?
That is the roof. You're looking at the shingles from on top of the roof, specifically on the north side of the house. As it collapsed inward.
I got to tell y'all, I don't know another way to say this, but just to say this house doesn't look like, obviously I know we're looking at the aftermath of a fire, but this house doesn't look like it started out being all that structurally sound to begin with. I have some real concerns and questions.
And in 26?
You can see the long charred board that I pointed out earlier.
Tosh, good
that's
to
above
see
the
you.
basement fireplace. To the left of that is the remains of the furnace, the metal portion. That's the furnace.
And 27?
27 is a close-up of the furnace.
And 28?
28 is back outside in the front, documenting where the 1-gallon gasoline can was, or is located.
And 29?
Is a close-up of the gasoline can that I eventually collected as evidence.
Just a moment, Your Honor, I'm sorry.
I couldn't imagine Chicken Shite, and I'm so sorry, Sadie, or Jennifer, that you were in a house that burned down. I'm glad you weren't home.
Marks already admitted as People's Exhibit 18. Do you recognize that?
This is the gasoline can that I collected, and these are my initials on the tape seal.
Does it indicate what time it was you collected it?
It says I collected it at 1:40 p.m.
And that was on the 8th of January?
on the 8th.
Thank you. And just so everyone's clear, this is in a clear, crinkly kind of bag. Is that fair?
Yes, that bag is made out of nylon.
Is that important?
Yes.
Why is that?
You cannot put evidence that you're going to have the lab checked for presence of ignitable liquids in a plastic bag. It has to be in either a nylon bag or a metal paint can.
And can you explain why you can't use plastic bags or any other container?
One of the reasons is, important reasons, is when the lab tests these samples, they will put the sample bag and all into an oven to try to heat it up. If you did that with a plastic bag, the plastic bag would melt, and if the plastic bag melts, it can give off petroleum-based products.
So therefore, I can assume that that nylon bag doesn't melt.
That nylon bag does not melt at the temperatures that they're subject to in the lab.
Fair. Now, looking at People's Exhibit 34-30,
This is a shed located to the southwest of the main structure.
and why are you taking a picture of a shed?
I'm documenting that that shed is there and is unburned.
And 31.
I am this is inside that shed, noting that this is an area where fuel cans are stored.
And I may have forgotten to ask this. We've talked about you collecting the red gas can that was out in the front yard, correct?
Correct.
Why did you collect that?
At the point I collected it, I did not know if it was evidence but it could be potential evidence because it was found in an area not with the other cans.
And following your documentation with photographs, your inspections, your excavations, so on and so forth, did you also try to collect any samples in this case?
I did not.
Why not?
Because the area I identified as the area of origin, the areas that I would have wanted to collect samples were gone. They were burned up. They didn't exist anymore.
And what would that have entailed if you could have collected?
It would have been the first floor, the flooring, any carpeting, any material on the first floor.
But your indication was those were totally consumed?
They are totally consumed, yes. Just as you can see by the earlier photographs from the basement up, there is no floor left.
And following your investigation at the scene, did you then go to another location on the 8th?
Yes.
Where did you go?
I went to the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department
What was your purpose in going there?
to package evidence that they had collected from the scene the night before, clothing and other material that were on Todd Stermer that night.
Do you recall what those were?
There was blankets, there was a coat, there was some clothes that came from Linda Stermer herself. They were in the evidence room of the Sheriff's Department, and I went in there and packaged them into nylon bags.
And did you collect any other evidence when you were at the Sheriff's Department?
At the Sheriff's Department, they also had metal paint cans that were collected at the autopsy of Todd Stermer. I collected those at that also.
And were you responsible for then transporting those items to the State Police Crime Lab?
I did. I transported all those items to the crime lab in Grand Rapids on January 11th.
Your Honor, can we approach very briefly?
Okay, so Chicken Shite says, I don't know if Americans know the term unorganized, but I live in a place like that. I don't need permits to build anything. Maybe he cut corners. So I mean, I'm familiar with that term, but not as it relates to, maybe unincorporated is a word that would be close in the United States. But in the United States, when you are building new construction, it does require permits because even if you are renovating, because anytime you're working with, putting in electricity, laying electrical lines and all of those things, it has to be inspected. So each step of the way, and you could, I mean, even in that process, yes, you could probably cut corners. But why would you if you're going to put your family in that? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe he could, maybe where he lived in that county, they what they require you to get permits for, it might be different, you know? What do you mean we don't seem to know the word dragged? I don't know what, I mean, I know the word dragged, but does it mean something different for you where you guys are than?
Sir, as a fire scene investigator, are you familiar with something called the scientific method?
Yes.
What is that, please?
Scientific method is a basic, is the basic method that investigation should occur. More of a, not the nuts and bolts, but more of the mental process of doing an investigation.
Fair to say it's the process by which you arrive at your ultimate opinion in a case?
Yes.
And when conducting a fire scene investigation, are there two different conclusions that you must determine?
Yes.
What are those?
The first thing I must determine is the origin of the fire, where the fire starts, and then try to determine the cause or why it started.
Now, with respect to the scientific method, did you follow it in this case?
Yes.
And do you recall what the steps of the scientific method are?
The first two steps are determine a need or define a product, determine a need and find the problem, which is, we almost skip over those because it's always the same two things. There's a fire, and the action that needs to be taken is to determine the origin and cause. Next step is to collect data. And data can be anything from observable patterns, witness interviews, lab samples, all the data. The next step is analyze the data. The data that I collected, observed, I look at it and try to determine what that means. The next step is to develop a hypothesis, a theory.
Get
I'm
back
going
here,
to
Patricia, and
develop as
explain
many
to me what you
theories
mean by dragged.
that I can initially. All the theory for what I'm doing. If I'm doing the origin, I'm going to develop theories or hypotheses of all the areas where the fire could have started. Then, once I've developed these hypotheses, I'm going to test these hypotheses or theories. And I'm going to use the data. The data I've collected, I'm going to take all the data and see if that data fits in to these theories or hypotheses. And as I go through there, if there is data that doesn't fit a certain hypothesis, then either the data is wrong, that hypothesis cannot be right. If all the data cannot fit in to that hypothesis. And then at the very end, I take that last hypothesis, that becomes my final hypothesis, and again, I take all the data that's known, look at that hypothesis, and come to the final conclusion.
So with respect to what we've discussed here in court so far, you've gone through the first couple steps because you showed up to a fire scene, correct?
Correct.
As far as data collection, is that what we've also talked about here in court?
Yes.
And that would be your photographs, your scene examinations. Does that include your samples you may or may not have taken from a fire scene? Is that fair?
Yes.
Does that include witness statements as well?
Witness statements are very important.
And does that also include lab reports?
Lab reports are very important.
And in this specific case, did you recall receiving any laboratory reports related to the items you seized from Mr. Stermer and those you collected at the Sheriff's Department?
I did.
What was that, please?
The lab report, and I'm doing this without looking at the lab report myself. So the gray sweatpants that I collected on the 7th indicated positive for gasoline. The gasoline can that I collected tested positive for gasoline. The items that were packaged in the metal paint cans that came from autopsy, which included the left and right socks, the underwear, and a shirt, all tested positive for gasoline. Other items that were collected that I packaged myself in the Sheriff's Department evidence lab would have been the clothes from Linda Stermer, blue blanket, a white blanket, and there may be another item that I packaged. Those items did not show the presence of ignitable liquid.
If Mr. Ernst has already testified here in court about his findings, we would rely upon those exact findings. Is that fair?
Yes.
Would you specifically recall the sweatpants, socks, and underwear of Mr. Stermer being positive for gasoline?
And the shirt.
And in addition to that, we talked about witness statements. Is that correct?
Correct.
Were you made aware, did you have an opportunity to review the statements of Linda Stermer?
I have.
What do you recall those being?
The witness statements from Linda Stermer as relates, and I was specifically looking as it relates to the fire. They're pretty consistent that she was in the basement doing laundry when she heard Todd Stermer scream. She goes up the stairs and looks into the living room, on the main floor living room. She sees the chair, the recliner chair, on fire, and Todd on fire across the room towards the bedroom with a line of fire between the chair and Todd.
Thank you. Now, I may have gotten a little bit ahead of myself there, so I'm going to take a little step back. Let's talk about the area of origin if we can.
Okay.
Did you develop various hypotheses as far as what the area of origin may have been in the Stermer house?
The pretty standard, when I look at a house fire, the original hypothesis is the whole house. I look at the whole house as the fire starts here, and then through a process of elimination, I start examining each area and then decide if this is or if there's or is not the area of origin. Often when you start out, it's pretty easy, as you start, that's the key word, when you start, it's pretty easy to look at a room where there's no fire damage and say, fire didn't start here, so you cross it off and you start moving closer. And typically you're moving from the least fire damage to the most fire damage, with the most fire damage typically being where the fire starts.
So, for instance, in this particular case, do you recall what your hypotheses were as far as the area of origin?
So the hypotheses for the area of origin, I broke down as east side of the structure, the south side of the structure, the basement, the living room, and the north side, which is going to be the kitchen dining room area.
All right, if we can work through those. Are those depicted in the photographs you have there in front of you?
Yes.
And if you can, let's start with the south side of the home. I think that was one of your hypotheses. Is that correct?
That is one, yes.
That's
This
really
photograph would be a
hold on.
representation of that. Well, actually, strike that.
Yes, let's strike that. Patricia, that sounds delicious. I would love a chocolate bar right now. I have the worst sweet tooth.
Let me strike that. I apologize. Where would you have started?
I would have started at the front.
Let's go with that. What photograph would be best to start there then?
The front is 9. And we will probably go between 9 and 13.
All right, looking at 34-9. This is the front of the house, correct?
Correct.
What about, what considerations are you looking for in this photograph?
So in this photograph, I'm trying to look at fire spread. What did the fire do on this side or this exterior wall? So I look at the door, I look at the 2 windows. There's some minor sooting above the windows, but there's really no fire damage of significance to talk about. So that's telling me the fire didn't come out those windows. And if the fire would have started there, I would have expected that the fire to start to the east side. Now, as I'm doing this, also the thought process is comparative. So I'm going to compare the east room to the west room. Which one has worse fire damage? And because that changes scene to scene depending on the size and intensity of the fire. So for this case, that little bit of smoke coming out of that, it's going to be left or south of the window, is pretty minor compared to the rest of the structure. Now, if we can skip to picture 13. So this is the aerial. At the bottom of the photograph, you can see a small roof, which is the roof over the porch. And you can see it's still there. It's not burned. But more importantly, if you look just beyond the porch, you can see a wall section and a window. And again, there's no fire damage or no fire coming out of that window. So that's telling me, compared to the rest of the house, there isn't as much fire damage. Now, in a situation like this, it's very important to distinguish between fire damage and collapse damage. So we're going to see a lot of collapse damage. The roof's collapsed, the floor's collapsed, but collapse damage is different than fire damage. So the fire is going to start, and that's going to cause a collapse. But you can see in this photo, the window where the wall is, it's a large section. It's collapsed, but it's still there. It's not burned. It's not burned away. we look directly to the right, which is going to be the northeast corner of the house, we can also see large sections, and underneath the snow is actually sections of the roof. The roof is collapsed in. So there's still a lot of unburned material there. I also looked in those windows and those holes. I told you I really couldn't get in to the east side, but I did stick my head in and take photographs inside, like those holes the fire department cut. I stuck my head in there, looked, and determined the fire damage there was drastically less than the west side of the house. So with that, I was able to eliminate we're gonna call the the northeast quadrant as the area of origin.
Now, and shame on me for failing to ask this, is there like a process by which a fire kind of progresses and spreads?
Yes, but that's a easy question that can lead to many complicated answers. Fire spread can be determined by fuel source, by ventilation, by location. So that's like a simplistic question where it can be very complicated as information comes forward.
Is there a way that a fire consumes a piece of fuel? For instance, well, strike that. We'll get to that later. With respect to collapse damage, you talked about that. What causes collapse damage?
Well, in my line of work, I'm not a structural engineer. So when I see collapse damage, it is a result of the fire. But the collapse is from the fire burning away structural members, floor, the center beam of the rafters. You see a lot of roof collapse because it burns away the peak where the trusses are, and then that makes the roof collapse. Or floor beams. Floor beams will be consumed, and that'll make the floor above them collapse.
Thank you. Now, when it comes to, so we just talked.
Yeah, we only have like 7 minutes of testimony left. You didn't really miss much. A lot of this has been going over his education and training, and then he went through specific photographs and just said what they were. We're just now really starting to get into his assessment of the damage and differentiating between actual fire damage and collapse damage. So you haven't missed a whole lot. I knew this wasn't going to be like a super duper long live, but also I promised that I would be live with part 2, and I didn't want to let you guys down. We probably could have just played this, in the morning and then started picked right up with him, but I promised you guys and I didn't want to let you down. So here we go.
Talked about, I think you said the northeast quadrant of the property. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you indicated that you were able to eliminate that as the area of origin?
Correct.
Where's the next place you would progress to?
I would have progressed to the south side.
South side?
The south side.
Okay.
So the south side, we can specifically see the roof is still there. It's still up. Let's switch over to photo 10. Don't worry, we'll go back to 13.
Excuse me?
10.
10? Oops, I'm too far. There we go.
So 10 is the south side of the structure. Again, I'm looking at the windows. There is fire coming out of the windows.
I figured you would have.
Of the first floor.
And I like to, if I say I'm going to be somewhere, I like to be there. So I'm, really trying. But yeah, there's, let me just rewind it a couple of seconds so we can hear what he was saying, because I don't want to be interrupting him. But this is the evidence. This is the testimony, in my opinion, anyway, that this will be weighed in my mind very heavily. If I'm deliberating on this jury, what he says to me matters most, because humans I think Gollum said it best, tricksy, false, so I think it's better to rely on the science. So I'm curious about this how he's going to determine all of this.
Oops, I'm too far. There we go.
So 10 is the south side of the structure. Again, I'm looking at the windows. There is fire coming out of the windows, more of the first floor than the basement. If you look at the basement windows, there's not even sooting on those windows.
Oh, okay. So now I get a better understanding of the layout of the house, but also I'm sorry that you had to go to the physical therapist, babe. You do not need to bring a note. You're excused. But I didn't I understand now more how the house is situated. So it's built almost like into the hill, which is kind of a cool way to do it. Oh, geez, Jen, is this your first day streaming?
You look to the first floor windows, you can see there is some smoke, some light fire that melted the vinyl siding. And above that is going to be the attic space. And you can see where the fires burned through the attic space. This is telling me there's not a lot of fire in those rooms on the other side of those windows because the fire is not trying to vent out those windows. Vent is a fire department, both a firefighting and a fire investigation term, is where the fire is trying to get more oxygen to burn. You know, the fire, most of us know that a fire needs oxygen to burn. That's how come if you throw a big pile of leaves on top of a campfire, it doesn't really do anything because the leaves have smothered the oxygen away. So now let's go back to 13 again. So 13, we can see the roof is still there. The roof hasn't collapsed. It didn't burn away. The only area is on the west side of the center line. Prosecutor Blair, if you could just zoom the area where that small burn area.
In this area here?
That area right there, yes.
Certainly.
Yes. So out of that roof section, this is the area of this section that is burned away. So I've noticed that this section is directly across from the living room versus the section on the other, and the center is the ridge line. The section to the south, or excuse me, to the east or to the bottom of the photograph, that is on the other side of the ridge line.
Yeah, where is MK
That
to
is
help us with
significant
this?
Because when fire gets into an attic space, regardless where, it's going to go to the peak. If you start a fire anywhere in the attic space, it's going to hit the roof section, it's going to hit the roof deck, and it's going to go up to the peak. And as it does that, it's going to start burning there. So we're going to have fire damage from where it enters the attic space going to the peak. So in this case, the fire is entering the attic on the west side of the peak. And you can see right at the very bottom, you can see the outline of the living room fireplace.
That'd be in this area here?
Yes, that's the living room fireplace. That, at this point, that is just for reference purposes.
Thank you.
So that helps me eliminate that. Now, remember the other photo from the inside. We're still talking about the south section. Let's look at photo 22.
Minutes or so. So whenever you can find a good spot between now and 5 minutes.
This is probably a good spot right now,
Okay.
actually. Your
Okay.
Honor. Yeah.
Okay.
Rather than jump into another photograph.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that's basically where we're going to pick up tomorrow is with his testimony and finishing up. Katie, I don't yet. I mean, okay, it's a little bit difficult for me, and I'll tell you why. Because technically, she should have the presumption of innocence, right? But she's been tried. She's been tried and found guilty before. And because there isn't a lot of, I know that there's shows about her, and maybe I'll check those out after, maybe during this weekend or something. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But because there isn't a real good detailed breakdown of her appeal and why her appeal was granted. See, I feel like it's possible that really what happened here is that she was granted a retrial on because of an error during the trial process, which there's that's perfectly legal. It's just that there's a difference to me between an actual innocence and acquittal. So for me right now, I haven't really heard anything that makes me actually lean one way or the other, quite frankly. We've heard a lot of, I have some questions about her behavior on that day. I definitely have some questions about the conflicting statements on that day. And have big, huge, glaring red flags about the situation with the van. I would, if she were backing out of that long, because it would have been on a slope. If she were backing down that driveway, I could see her hitting him in the chaos, trying to haul ass to the neighbors. But she didn't. She started out backing up and then she went forward. There's something right, not quite right there. I also think, correct, Patricia. That's how I feel. I don't know. I'm still on the fence, and this is why this person's testimony and then the state's defense's expert witness testimony about the fire is going to be key for me, really. But anyway, you guys, thank you all so much for being here. If you haven't done so, could you do me a favor? Could you give your girl a thumbs up on the stream? I'd really appreciate it. And I'll be back live tomorrow at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. And we will continue with Mr. Leroy. All right. You guys have a great rest of your night, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.